Welcome to Ali Fitness Podcast, a weekly production all about bringing health into fitness. Dr. Christopher Mason is currently an associate professor at Weill Cornell Medicine with appointments at least 4 institutions. He completed his dual BS in genetics and biochemistry from University of Wisconsin-Madison and his PhD in genetics from Yale University. But today it's longevity that I want to share with everyone. This is the brainchild of 2 amazing doctors, Dr. Chris Mason, who I've just mentioned, and Dr. Joel Dudley, who will come on the show soon. And these guys want to show how people can actually understand and manage their own health, which I'm super passionate about. And that's why I've got you on the show today, Dr. Chris. So I just also want to let you know that basically their expertise in the fields of multiscale omics, bioinformatics and machine learning have sort of all come together to complete this amazing company, Longevity. So Dr. Chris, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Excellent. Look, I guess the best place to start is what exactly is Longevity, and why did you decide to form this awesome business?
Great. Well, thanks for the pleasant intro, and I mean the company really, and also it's really great to be here again. I think the company is something I've been passionate about ever since I started studying genetics. Ever since I really was a graduate student, getting my PhD in genetics. Originally, I'm thinking about how do we enable people to have access to all the information about their own genetic or their own molecular profiles and make it easy for them, make it informative, make it useful, because a lot of genetics over the past 10, 15 years has been more an association or something you can't really act on. But we know a lot more today than we ever have, and we can use a lot of this information. So the company is Longevity Health, which is a health intelligence platform to measure, monitor, and be able to then act on various biomolecules in your body. So these are things that your listeners are probably very familiar with, like looking at your genetic code, so looking at human DNA. But one of the first things that we launched was looking at your microbiome in your gut, where you actually look at all the species that are present inside of basically in your stomach that can lead to changes in how you process food, how you digest drugs you might be taking, how you process vitamins and create vitamins. All these things are mediated by sort of this miniature pharmacy and ecosystem that's in your gut that we wanted people to be able to look at using the latest and greatest technologies, which we call shotgun metagenomics, which we can talk about. And the other thing is we're also doing blood draws, so people can actually more readily access what are the small molecules and profiles in their blood. So basically, we think that this trinity of blood and blood work and genetics and microbiome give a really comprehensive view of someone's health and whether they're on the going right or the wrong direction, and then ways to modify it.
Awesome. Look, Chris, not that the devil needs an advocate, but if I was to play devil's advocate, sure, I would say what really differentiates you, because I know there's lots of companies out there at the moment from, 23andMe to you name it. There's a lot of kits that you can get, do it in the comfort of your own home and get these amazing reports that are very comprehensive. What's the difference between those and Longevity?
The biggest difference is just in one word, which is actionable. So most of the reports you get out there are kind of for cocktail discussions. Like, so I got an ancestry test on, I can tell that I already knew what my parents and grandparents told me, is that I was from, say, Northern Europe or maybe, from Japan. You know a lot of that already. So you could look in the mirror and probably guess a lot of your ancestry. Or like 23andMe, you get some associations with different diseases, but no real action. There's not much you can do with that information except worry. And we do the majority of those things already with the genetic testing. We look for very specific risk markers, and we'll tell you what they are if they're relevant. But the other thing is we want to think about what are the things that you can actually act on. Like what are the molecules that you could change in your body that would improve your health, and particularly and not just in general. There's 2 big problems with what's out there. One is it's not actionable, and the other thing is it's too broad. It covers like every possible disease, every possible indication. But we talk a lot about precision wellness, but wellness even itself is kind of broad as a term. So we focus on people first with gut issues like IBS, IBD, and then also look more at in general questions of where you look at performance, like in fitness, or we have a lot of athletes and Olympic athletes that work with our company. So we want to look at people that are either teetering on the edge of sickness and can benefit from it, or really want to focus on improvement. and quantify it. So the actionability comes from you can order probiotics, prebiotics, very specific vitamins or supplements that we know work well based on clinical trials we've run for specific indications. So we don't just want to give you a list. We want to give you something you can do with that list, things you can order. And then I'll tell you a little bit later, other things we can do to really customize it. Like we can actually eventually get a printed out, a high-speed printed small package like tea that you could put in that's customized and genetically tailored to your specific physiology.
Great. And Dr. Chris, would it be fair to say that the way that you actually come up with the results is a bit different to the general testing that's out there?
Yeah, very much so. So there's a lot of companies out there that they'll say, we'll look at your microbiome, or we'll, take a piece of your stool. And if you've ever collected a piece of your own stool, there's nothing glorious about that moment, when you're in the bathroom, and hopefully the door is closed when you're doing this, You have to usually stab your own stool and then put it into a tube. So we did make a tube that's a little bit easier for collection. We also have a new device coming out early next year that's even simpler, which is just a variation of like a wipe, actually. So it's even easier for collection. So we focused a lot on making things easy for people and making it, as I already said, actionable. But we did want to make it so that when you get when you collect the samples, and you send them in, it happens relatively quickly and without too much discomfort, and it's something that you can use right away. So I think those are some of the other kind of differentiators.
But in terms of actually testing, are there different ways? Because I've actually heard of people doing a test with you and then doing a test with another service and getting a different result.
Yeah, so one of the reasons is we use, so some of the methods that are on the market use something called 16S sequencing, whereas we use what is the most accurate and up-to-date method in microbiome research called shotgun sequencing. And the idea is kind of like if you're looking at, the comparison would be 16S is you look at one gene that's present in most bacteria, and it's called the 16S ribosomal RNA gene, but basically a lot of people just call it 16S because that's actually the size of the band as you run it through on a gel in a lab and see how big it is. It's just the name for that gene, but you only look at one gene, and you try to infer what's present for the ecosystem in a gut, whereas we look at all the genes from all the species because we shotgun sequence, meaning we break apart all the cells, take all those fragments of DNA and sequence all of them, whether it's bacteria, virus, fungal, plant. We can even see what people are eating based on their profile. So that is one of the key differentiators. If you take a test that's with an older technology called 16S, you will likely get different results that are much less accurate than what we give you because they're only looking at one gene. We're looking at tens of thousands of genes. So it's a really big differentiator. The good analogy would be if you're flying in a plane and you look down, you can kind of see a bird's eye view of a forest, whereas we can see all the birds and animals and creatures that are in the forest and then actually quantitate them. So that is, one of the biggest differentiators. And we've had other people do testing with more modern methods, and the concordance is very high. But if you use an older, frankly, crappier method, you will get crappier results.
And I assume your artificial intelligence side of things makes it even more accurate?
Correct. Yeah. So AI is a bit, overblown these days. Everyone's doing AI. My grandmother's doing AI, I think, in her kitchen right now. So everyone talks about using AI, but we're very specific about, what we do. We generally use elastic net regression methods and also support vector machines. These two methods that we like the most in terms of these kind of data is we take all the fragments of DNA from all known species and then we've segregated them into small chunks and then use thousands of samples from public data sets and thousands from our own samples to see what is associated with and what moves with different indicators. Like when you have dysbiosis in your gut, or if you're very healthy, or if you've been changing your diet, we can see these trends move in the ecosystem in your gut and in your blood work. And so the AI platform is built off the learning of these features from the blood and from the genetic makeup. So the platform is, is part of the accuracy, but also part of the adaptability. The more we sequence, the more we learn and the better we get with it as well.
Got you. And so why did you actually start with the gut?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is something that's relatively easy to collect. It's something that you leave behind in the bathroom. It is a very plastic part of biology. It's something that you can modify and you can change and improve on. And then it's easy to test again to see if something you've changed works because you can just test again. And it's also something that we know very well. I think, we know very specific species that can drive inflammation, that can drive dysbiosis and diarrhea and constipation. We know them well, but but the complexity of human genetics for risk for, say, cardiovascular disease is more nascent. I feel like some of the very specific species and very specific indicators for gut health, we can check them quickly and we know what they are. And we can work with them. Whereas the other aspects of biology are still more complicated. So they're a bit more vague, I'd say.
Okay, so who presumably then should take such a test?
I would say so. If you're healthy and you're curious, it's great because you can get a sense of how is your body doing? What are you seeing for your physiology? And then that basically gives you a backup plan. So if something ever goes wrong with your physiology, with your gut health, with your microbiome, you then have a basically insurance policy of what you look like when you're healthy. So it's good for curiosity's sake, but it's also a form of insurance, if you will, of what you look like, and then you know what to go back to. But if you also have problems where you have a bit of dysbiosis, or you have a problem like IBS and IBD. Also, we have a clinical trial working actually for breast cancer survivors who have high levels of estrogen in their blood, some of which is mediated by the microbes in the gut. So it's for people that are curious or people that have recently gone through any sort of traumatic or medical condition. We can see how well you're bouncing back. And then in the case of IBS, give you very specific recommendations of ways to improve things. And the other direction is for people that are healthy but want to get even more healthy. Like on the fitness side, people looking at performance, we're launching a whole new product in January called Perform Bio, which really focuses on aspects of blood work and microbiome and genetics that look at performance measures and ways to improve it. So, and then the other question would be like, okay, I take the test, I see these things, and I could order these other ways to make things better. Great. Well, how often do I go back? We've had some people come back if they have active IBS issues. They'll come back every month or some every 2 weeks. We've even seen. But some people also just come back once every 6 months or once a year to take a look at the test and see how they're doing. So today it serves as a good metric of your health and biology and overall physiology. But we're adding a lot more tests to make it even better in the near future.
And Dr. Chris, do you need a doctor to interpret the results, or is your the report that you give sufficient?
So every report gets signed off by a physician and reviewed by a physician. So it does go through a physician's network, but you don't need one to look at it. We want it all to go through physicians, so everything has been checked. But when you get it, we want it to be very digested, comprehensible, and very clear to anyone anywhere. So when you get it, you don't need to sit down with the doctor, although we encourage you to do so to help maintain a good medical collaboration with your physicians.
Okay. And so presumably then the report also explains how to fix or start resolving any issues that you might have.
Yes. And actually with specific and genetically tailored products that you can buy from either people that we've partnered with or that we know work for probiotics or prebiotics or vitamins.
Great. And I believe Thorne chose to partner with you on this.
That's right.
Yeah. So how does the very amazing supplement company choose to do this with you, and how do they benefit from it?
Yeah. So some of it is I know the CEO of Thorne, and I know a lot of the team there, and the supplement industry, and really the vitamins and the prebiotics and the probiotics group is really generally filled with pretty suspicious actors, people who are selling things that aren't real, people who source things from, countries with very little regulation. So you're not even getting the prebiotics you think you are, or the probiotics, or vitamins for that matter. So, we've sequenced the DNA of things off the shelves and done molecular profiling of products on the market. And, I would say about 60% of them, sometimes up to 80% of the ones we've tested are just not selling what they're telling you. So, but what's good is, Thorne, I've been to their manufacturing facility that's in Charleston. It's a 300,000 square foot manufacturing facility for all their probiotics and supplements and all their products or vitamins. I've seen it with my own eyes. It's all spot check. It has NSF certification. It's used by Olympic athletes. Like these are the products used by, football teams, baseball teams, basketball. They're really well validated, and it's really good product. So it's good to work with people you trust. And Thorne actually, they've been selling to physicians for about 25 years. Only recently have they broadened up to be sold on Amazon and other places where you can just sell to the public. which is now about actually half their business. So that used to just be through physicians, but now it's broader. That's the other thing, is that they're really trusted by physicians as well. So knowing that as a backdrop, when I first met Paula Jacobson as the CEO, and also Joel Dudley and I have been friends talking about this, we kept thinking that, there's literally about 80% of adults take some form of supplement or vitamin every day. Like it's amazing. It's basically a large scale, unregulated clinical trial, and we're just giving people things and have no idea if they work. So when I first met Paul, I had the same question for him. I said, well, man, how do you know any of these things work, right? Like there's occasionally some clinical trial that's done or a double blind trial. And he admitted, he said, we know that some work, but a lot of them we should get more data. We think they work, or we've got anecdotes, but we should really have systematic and comprehensive views of, does it really work? And I said, I couldn't agree more. And we should use the modern biochemical methods, genetic methods, integrative biology methods, and then really flesh it out. And so it became just a brainstorming and really, passionate mutual desire to quantify what works for people, how well does it work, and then to optimize what we recommend people.
Awesome. And I was really pleased to hear that you'd partnered with them, because they're one of the few companies that I actually do trust when it comes to buying supplements. So that's great. And I can see the more and more data you get, the better the supplement's going to become. So that's awesome. So you mentioned that you're going to have, or that you do have, customized tests or results. How does one go about getting a very customized report?
So to get just a customized report for the standard microbiome testing, you just order a kit now, and you'll get that report back, and it's perfectly tailored for what we've measured inside you, and so you can just get that today. What we're working on in the future is, I think a lot of people have coffee in the morning or tea. What we envision is that you would actually very soon be able to quickly print out exactly what we recommend based on our genetic measures for your own body. So that you would basically have a genetically tailored probiotic and mixture of different other sort of vitamin supplements, depending on what you need, that you would have every morning that's really tailored to you. And so that doesn't exist yet, but we have prototypes of it in the lab that we're working on, and want to roll out some of that more next year.
Great. And can you tell us a bit more about, you mentioned in January that there's going to be a special test for sort of athletes or inspired athletes who want to start performing better. What's that going to look like?
Yeah, so it's called, and I've seen the mock-up of this and sort of what the website's going to look like. So it's called Perform Bio, and it's going to be, as you can tell by the name, really built for performance and people looking at, health metrics, people really interested in, improving their general athletic performance. It could be athletes, it could be amateur athletes. It could be, just, again, my grandma in the kitchen doing her AI, and maybe she wants to do her performance better, her as well.
For all those crosswords that she's doing.
Yeah, that's right. And, and also making lasagna.
Right.
So she's, so what that'll be is related to some of the things we've already launched, like the Gut Bio product is something that's already out that you can get. But we will include some of the other components that are pretty relevant to your nutrition, your sort of training load, stress, and sleep, other components. So a little bit will be a survey, so we get some information about you, but then we want to measure things, certain things, like what do your energy levels look like in response to vitamin B9, B12, your cholesterol, HDL, LDL, triglycerides. That's kind of on your energy levels and sort of the cardiovascular regulation. But from the blood work, we'll get, what do you look like during recovery? Like, what's your cortisol levels, vitamin D? There's something called C-reactive protein, which is actually a really common marker of inflammation and stress. Interestingly, when we've looked at astronauts when they come back from space, and that's one of the things that spikes up as soon as you get back to gravity. So, if you do it right, you could be doing a really tough workout, and then you might look a little bit like an astronaut, at least from a biochemical perspective when you get done. And then we'll also look at other things that can change your performance in muscle tone, like testosterone, DHEA, estradiol, progesterone, some of these features as well.
Okay, so unlike the other tests that you do, this is actually going to include hormones as well.
Exactly, that's right.
Got you. And will you also take into consideration, you mentioned sleep and that sort of thing. Obviously, you're going to do that by asking them how often do they sleep and what have you. But are you going to actually look at any data if they have, like, for example, an Oura Ring or a Whoop? Are you going to have a look at that data as well?
Yes, that's the plan. So we'll have that should be able to launch by January. It might go back to February. We want to have the integration be very seamless. But that is exactly the goal, because people do wear a lot of these monitors. People have a variety of metrics, Fitbits and other so wearable devices that we want to have as a key feature of the metrics.
Awesome. And so who are these tests available for?
So it will be at launch. So we have physicians right now in 42 states that have signed up to help. Again, everything gets ordered, reviewed, and then confirm with a physician. So we're expanding that network now. So anyone in those states, and when you go to order a test, it'll tell you if you're in one of those states, but it's for the majority of the United States. We haven't yet launched internationally. We have a partner in Japan, which is Kirin. The beer manufacturer probably, but they also make a lot of food and they make vitamins. They make all kinds of things. So they have this vision of having really smart food and smart beverages and customized, profiles that you can get from again, kind of the same idea, like get a genetic profile and then customize the food or the beverages to somebody. They are going to be our partner for Japan, and we had a press release about that a couple months ago. So we will launch probably in Japan next, and then eventually we want to be, in any country, anywhere. But every country has slightly different regulations on genetic testing, so we want to make sure we're fully compliant and have everything done in a clinical laboratory.
Got you. So if you're in one of the 42 states in the US, are you able to order the kit online, or do you actually have to ring or go and see a physician?
You can just order it online, and it actually gets routed through the physician. So for the customer, most of them, they don't even realize it till they get the report back from the physician. But it's not, you don't have to go through the physician, but you certainly can. We have doctors who've been ordering the kits, and they keep them, in their office for when, patients want them.
And so you can do that in the comfort of your own home then?
That's right.
And I'm assuming, though, the blood draw device that you've just come out with, that can't be done at home?
Not yet. So currently the FDA approval is for what's called a supervised blood draw, meaning it could be a pharmacist, it could be a nurse, it could be a doctor, someone in a healthcare professional setting has to be there when you draw the blood. However, we think within about a year, it should be for anyone, anywhere to launch.
Wow, that's awesome. And I guess I've got to ask you, where to from here? Because, I mean, the gut is obviously a huge and easily measured part of the body, but I guess there's all these other things, and I love that you're going to be doing the performance stuff with all the hormones as well. But what else are you looking at doing?
Yeah, so the other thing is we're launching later next year something called we call FemBio, which is looking a lot at women's health issues. So microbiome's also, as I alluded to, been linked to what are the levels of estrogen in your blood or other metrics, other hormones. When you take certain antibiotics or even psychiatric drugs, they can be modified by what's in your gut as well and what's in your body. So it's not just looking at the gut in general, but looking at the gut in particular for breast cancer surgery survivors and they want to control estrogen levels and thinking about that. Polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS, we are seeing there's been some interesting papers that link genetics and microbiome and PCOS, so we're looking at that as well as a direction. But we really want to have a very health-focused platform for women's health, which is being led by Dr. Hardy, Teresa Hardy at Longevity, who's leading the effort and has been working in the clinical space for years to do this. So that'll come up probably more in the middle of next year, but we have that also ongoing as a product that really want to look at, everything from variations in menstrual cycle to PCOS, to vaginal health, and she's leading up that whole effort. So that'll also be coming out, down the line.
And Dr. Chris, what would that look like in terms of, let's say, for example, a woman was to do her hormone levels and found that they weren't quite right and needed some, I guess, potential replacement therapy, hormone replacement therapy, or whatever it is. How would that be monitored? Because I'm assuming that you'd need a physician to monitor the dosages and that sort of thing.
Yes, you mean in terms of like if they're taking HRT or hormone replacement?
Yeah, if you were to subscribe that, then how would they, I guess, monitor that?
Yeah, we want to. So some of the blood work measures we could help with that, but also if they're already getting blood work, we could just integrate that data. So this would be like most of our work has been in really tight partnership with physicians and physicians networks and nurses. So I think we continue that trend where we work in a very tight collaboration with patients, physicians, partners. But some people might just want to measure on their own because they've already had HRT for several years, or HRT kind of was in vogue for a while, but then looks like it had some risks. And so I think it's because we didn't understand enough about what that would do to the rest of the biology. So that's what we want to enable people to do, is to have more and better and easier ways to look at what's happening in their body.
Okay, great. So if someone was to go online now and order a kit, what would the process be like? So how long would the kit take? What exactly would they do in order to get the like feces to you, like what does it all look like in terms of how do they get their samples? What do the samples look like? And then what sort of report would they get? And would that include recommendations for supplements?
It would. So basically, the way it works today is you order a kit. That gets routed to a physician who checks it to make sure what you filled out online is there's nothing really amiss about sort of the person ordering it, or that they're not from a different state, or that they're ordering it on behalf of someone else. That's really that person ordering it. We haven't yet enabled proxy ordering quite yet, but just double checks the order to make sure that it looks okay. Then from there, we, basically you should get a kit then in the mail, which has a self-addressed return package. Usually within about 3 or 4 days, it shows up at your house. Once it's there, you can then basically collect a stool sample. If you do the genome as well, you'll collect an oral sample for DNA. But once you get it, what happens is you'll see basically you have to get this little collection kit out that stabilizes a tiny piece of stool that you would, you basically put like a little, almost like a catcher's mitt, if you will, over the toilet. And you do your normal business on the toilet, but you collect a little piece of stool, put it into the tube. You don't even need that much at all. We have found that some people are overachievers and they'll stuff as much as possible into the tube, which the lab does not appreciate. So you don't need to go crazy. You just need a tiny bit. Unlike some other testing methods, we actually, because we look at billions of molecules, we just need a small bit of it to start to look at them. You put it basically into, put it into the tube, seal the top. Throw it back in the package, and it's stable at room temperature. So there's no ice, there's no cold packs. You just put it back in the mail, and then you send it off. Basically, then you get to, within about, our average is about 19 days. When it comes into the lab, gets extracted, processed, sequenced, and then analyzed. Then you get an email with a report. And we also have an app, so it's on the Apple Store. You can go download the app there, or Google Play. You can look at the app on your phone, or you can go to the website and then take a look at what's the profile. So the profile, once you get it, we'll look at all these core metrics, like basically, again, with a focus on the microbiome, what's in your gut. We look at billions of molecules. We look at what are your metrics for constipation, for diarrhea, inflammation. So they're trying to see what are your risk factors there, what are any species that seem to be driving that. Then we look at your sort of digestive capability, we call it, which is what is the basically the diversity of your gut? What are the things you can probably process through your gut, which we can infer from the machine learning platform? Then one of my favorite things is we look at micronutrients. So interestingly, if you look at like how many micronutrients like vitamin B3, B6, B12, but interestingly these B vitamins, a lot of them are actually made by the bacteria in your gut. So you think of like vitamin B6. It turns out actually about 85% of it comes from the microbes in your gut, not from what you eat. So, if you think about what's in your body, you have to keep in mind the ecosystem in your gut in terms of where things are being made and by whom. So we take a look at what your sort of capacity is for making B6. So it's kind of the micronutrient section. Then we do also look at, potential, if there's any pathogens detected, we'll tell you, and then a physician will reach out to you for any additional testing. But then we also look at what's the overall ecosystem look like, and then probiotics, like what are some species that look like they're good in your gut that might be beneficial. And then at the end, we say, given this profile, given your background, given what we've learned, we then recommend specific probiotics or probiotic supplements, vitamins, and then a diet based on, again, all the available literature and everything we've seen from every patient so far, and give you something that you can act on. So if you just want to take a peek and you feel fine, you can just leave it as is. But if you want to actually maintain the status quo or improve your health and sort of your gut physiology, we give you actionable things to order that could improve it.
Awesome. And do you do much in the terms of food sensitivities, or what are your thoughts around that?
So we don't make a report on, say, for, guessing whether you're going to be allergic to peanuts, for example, or other like shellfish allergies. We don't do anything yet in allergies because the microbiome's not yet a really good way to do so. And we do basic immune, the CRP testing for blood work will tell you if you have inflammation, but we don't do that yet. But that's something we were talking about bringing online. But the short answer is no, not yet. I'm by the hospital, so you can hear sounds in the background.
I can. Interesting. So what do you think about, because there are a lot of companies out there at the moment that are doing food sensitivity testing, as well as not so much allergy testing, but more sensitivity. What are your thoughts about the those measurements and the capacity that people can actually do those?
And I think the early days, it's interesting. There are early days for trying to really predict how sensitive you are, and lots of people are oversensitive to things by some testing measures. I also think our knowledge base of what it means to be sensitive and what you should do about it has changed in the last 3 to 4 years. So, for example, peanut allergies used to be, really, you just remove all peanuts from your life and from your diet, and anyone that's near you was the recommendation, because people could go into anaphylactic shock and they could die from a peanut allergy. So what's interesting is what we now know is that's the worst thing to do if you started to become allergic to peanuts. It turns out, especially if you're an infant, 2 different large-scale clinical trials have shown if you instead have low-level exposure to peanuts over time, your risk of being allergic later in life is much lower than if you just take all the peanuts away. So you kind of need this low-grade training of your immune system to learn how to deal with some of the sensitivity rather than ablate all these items from your life. And so I think, there's 2 different New England Journal of Medicine papers that showed that in 2015 and 16. And just recently, the FDA approved a version of this idea for therapy where you do low-level exposure to nut allergens as a way to, basically to treat it. So I think the medicine and the science on that has changed a lot in the last few years. And so I think how we test for it and treat it are also going to probably change soon. Or already have in some cases, yeah.
Yeah, right. Interesting. So, Dr. Chris, I guess I keep coming back to this same question. If you were giving advice to someone, I guess you'd just say, look, just go to Longevity Health and get your kit there. But how does one know whether they're getting the right test? I mean, let's assume that they want to get a test on their gut. How do they know? Let's say there's a lot of, like I said, popular companies. Everlywell seems to be dominating a bit of the market at the moment. What should people be looking for in terms of what's this test really going to measure, and how effective is their testing?
Yeah, I think a lot of the metrics are just in what do the people see and what do they feel. And so I think we've had a lot of customers that really say, they hadn't had a normal bowel movement in 5 years and suddenly they can, or people that really just feel better. So I think the proof is often in the phenotype and how well do people feel. The other thing that we're doing is we're measuring, we have a product called Lab 100, which is basically a booth you go in that does a large degree of other kind of testing. So it measures 1 billion different data points about your body. So thinking about balance, strength, your body fat, other metrics of sort of, physiology, and we use that to really phenotype, to get a lot of data about the body. So instead of just saying, do you feel better on a scale of 1 to 10, which, you can do a little bit on, and that tells you that maybe you're in the right direction. But we've launched this product called Lab 100, which you can also, Google it up and see, is this new platform for a comprehensive measure of the entire body, and many sort of modalities at the same time. So it includes blood work, balance, strength, a lot of other sort of physiological metrics that you can put into one big booth. And then the goal is that we want to have people come back and then more exquisitely quantify what's working and what's not working, and then make sure people have that as a metric and a benchmark.
Okay, great. So I guess to be even more direct, why would I order the kit from you?
Well, instead of a competitor potentially?
Yeah.
I think, we have what I would argue to be, the best platform in terms of what we measure, and how we measure. So I think most platforms are only one thing, like one modality of biology. And a lot of the other ones focus a lot on coaching, where someone will call you a lot or chat with you, which we don't think is that helpful. It's helpful for some people, but it's very labor intensive and it's not scalable. We want the data to speak more for itself and to learn from it, as fast as we can. So I think, I think we have the most cutting edge and modern methods for the genetic profiling. We have the most extensive phenotyping platform, the Lab 100, that exists, and I think we've got a really good team of passionate people behind it. So all those things together, I think we're the best.
Awesome. That was a very good sales pitch. And I'm definitely convinced. Dr. Chris, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us, maybe stuff that you might be doing in the future, or where you think all of this might go in, let's say, 5 years' time, what it might look like?
Yeah, well, I think some of them I've already touched on, which looks a lot at, what do we think is coming for Lab 100 coming up in the future. So that I'm glad we touched on that a bit. And I think we want to expand this to other countries. We want to expand out the markets and people that can use it. So again, performance, FemBio coming soon. So we also really encourage feedback. We want people to tell us if something works great, but even better if something doesn't work well or they think something's confusing. We really want it to be collaborative with all of our customers and in some cases our patients that we're working with. It's really kind of a team effort to learn as fast as possible and make things more functional and useful for people.
Excellent. That's great. And Dr. Chris, before I let you go, I've got to ask you a question that I ask all the guests on the show. Do you have a tattoo?
I do not. I've never yet committed to one thing I would want to have, just that one thing of. Yes, so not yet, no.
Are you considering it, or you?
I am, yes, yeah, I am. I'm thinking about it. I've been thinking about it for a while. Why do you ask?
Oh, like I said, I like to ask all the guests. I find it fascinating. It tells me something about you. So what would you get?
Well, I would think, the candidate would be something that has kind of a blend of a yin-yang symbol in the middle, and then outside of that would be like the biohazard symbol. So the inside of it would be the yin-yang, the outside the biohazard symbol, which would represent maybe the danger of too much balance. You need to have balance, but the right amount of slight imbalance occasionally.
Wow. And that's why I asked that question, because that just told me so much about you.
Well, to be fair, what I mean by that is the body and the mind grow often from being challenged, right? So you can't just be at perfect equilibrium at all times. Part of equilibrium is to disrupt it in functional ways at good times to do so. Like, if you push yourself in the gym a little bit harder, then you grow stronger, or you push your endurance a little bit harder. You do have to have a little bit of bounciness to your equilibrium, I'd say. Imbalance
to your balance.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. Look, thank you so much for sharing all this with us. I'll link to everything in the show notes, and I can't wait to get our listeners to let me know what they think.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. For all the resources and show notes from today's episode, please go to www.ally.fitness. If you liked today's episode, please show your appreciation by going to iTunes, give us a 5-star review and subscribe.